I have a strange feeling. I just found Annette's house, who is the person I'll be interviewing in this video. She runs a local dog rescue here in Ajijic. Okay, so if you've watched my channel before, I might have mentioned that my spirit animal is the turtle. Check out this tortoise back here on the wall inside. You can tell that Annette is definitely an animal lover, and I can hear some of the animals right now. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why those murals made me understand that I was in the right place. But we're going to talk now to Annette. Her husband Mike is not around. Annette's going to tell us a little bit about how they ended up in Mexico and how Jordon and Maddie were part of that story.
We were living in College Station, Texas, because my husband and I went to Texas A&M. And our kids were grown, gone off to college and graduated, and we were wondering what to do next. We were only 51 and 54 at the time, and I happened upon a video on YouTube. I don't know why it was suggested to me. I wasn't looking for videos about Mexico or retirement, but a video popped up in my feed from a channel called Tangerine Travels. Jordon and Maddie were a young American couple that were traveling all around Mexico, and they had settled in Ajijic for 6 episodes or so.
It doesn't really feel like it's lost that charming Mexico small town vibe that a lot of towns have.
And I watched their videos and just fell in love with Ajijic. I knew that I wanted to visit and probably wanted to retire there. However, my husband didn't want to retire outside of the United States. So I said, well, let's just go for a short vacation, 4 days, go see what it's like. Even though we had been to Cancun and Playa del Carmen and the vacation parts of Mexico, we had never been to the interior of Mexico. And we flew down to Guadalajara and stayed in an Airbnb. And I knew as soon as we got here that this was the place for me, that this was going to be my happy spot. And so I was trying to patiently wait for my husband to catch up with my vision. And I took a nap the second day. And while I was sleeping, my husband went for a walk and found an open house. And the realtor at that open house told him how inexpensive the property taxes were here and said, oh yeah, for the house he was looking at, it was a pretty big house and it was $350 US a year in property taxes. And that was amazing because in Texas, we were spending $1,500 US a month on property taxes. And so we really could actually retire early because of the low property taxes here and the lower cost of living. The house costs were about the same as Bryan College Station because that's a small town in rural Texas. So it wasn't a huge difference like it is for people from the Northeast or Northwest US or California. It's really cheap here compared to those states. But Texas, it was pretty equal. And we came down, and once we realized that we loved it here, we said, okay, we have to come back for a longer trip then so that we can look at houses. And we did, and we found the house that we're in now. We bought it, and it was back about 4 years ago, and we had a 9-month gap until we could close because there were some snowbirds from Ontario that were living in the house, and they didn't want to leave until it was the end of the winter and they could go back to Toronto. And we moved down, we rented a house. Actually, we rented 2 different houses, one and then another, and then finally moved into our house after living here about 6 months.
You know, I've heard the story of moving to Mexico to rent in little bits before your house is ready, especially with new construction or with pre-construction. Sometimes once you make the decision to move to Mexico, you just got to get down there, even though what you're purchasing is not ready. So it's very common for your real estate agent to work with other agents about getting you a rental house while you're waiting for that close. For us, our closing took 9 months. It was during COVID. There were just government closures and things like that. But it worked out perfectly for us because it was during the summer that were those months. And so we actually got into it. December 1 was when it closed, and that's when we wanted to get into our house. So sometimes things just work out perfectly. And when they don't, it works out perfectly because you get to live in a different part of town in a different house for just a little bit.
When we moved here, all the other expats here, like in the Facebook groups, they had said, oh, you should rent first. You should get a feel for the different parts of town, where you fit in the best. But when we were here, we felt very comfortable going ahead and making a decision. to go ahead and buy a house. And part of it was because we had several dogs. We didn't want to have to bother trying to find a rental that would allow our several dogs. Plus, my husband has a bunch of woodworking equipment, which is super heavy, and there's no way he would move from Texas to Mexico without his woodworking equipment. And we decided to bring my parents down. They decided to move here with us and share the house because it's big enough for two families. And it would be too disruptive to move my parents twice also. So, and also we had lived in other countries before. We had lived in Ethiopia and in Haiti, and we're already used to culture shock. So we felt like Mexico culture shock would be super easy compared to Ethiopia.
So Annette just mentioned her parents. Actually, I met Dad out back, and we're going to do a tour of the house and show you everything because this is a gorgeous place. Maybe we'll meet some dogs along the way. I want to talk about her parents because Ajijic is a location that is known for elder care for people from the States or Canada. And I've got a video that I'm working on about that. If it's ready, it's going to be in one of those corners up there. Annette's mom has dementia. And so this is going to be a good opportunity to kind of bridge the gap between those two videos because it is becoming more and more common for adult children of parents that need extra care to move to Mexico, especially to the Ajijic area. I want to hear a little bit more about that from her perspective. So let's talk about your parents.
My mom had had a stroke a few years ago before we moved here. She didn't have any movement issues arise because of the stroke, but she did have aphasia, which made it hard for her to choose the right words when she was talking. And then she started developing dementia, which is also what her mom had, her sister had. We were expecting that to eventually be a problem, but it was really expensive in Texas to get in-home care. And even though my mom and dad were living in the same town as us in Bryan, College Station, Texas, we just couldn't provide enough support, and it was draining on Dad. So we knew that it would be much easier for them to get good care down here, and that we could get in-home care at a very reasonable price. In fact, when we started here, first moved here, I hired some aides to come and help with Mom for $4 US an hour. We later hired a nurse for $5 US an hour. In the last 4 years, we've raised it to $6 US an hour. But you still can get aides for $4 US an hour. Very, very loving people because Mexican culture really values their elders. When we moved down here, Mom and Dad were a little hesitant at first because they had not explored Mexico, been to Mexico before. They weren't adventurous travelers like me and my husband. So we brought them down and showed them the house that we wanted to buy and share with them. And they said, oh, yeah, definitely go for it. But when they initially got here, they were a little hesitant. So Dad's a big fisherman. So we set him up with a fishing guide who took him out on Lake Chapala for the day, and he went bass fishing, and he loved that they caught a bunch of bass. And my mom is just happy-go-lucky, very easy to live with. She and I looked at all the beautiful colors. We had a golf cart. We rented the golf cart and drove around the little streets and all of the colorful houses and the beautiful flowers and just how tropical and green it is right here in the village year-round. It really appealed to Mom. And then we went to a place in San Juan Cosalad for dinner, and they had a folklorico ballet demonstration by a bunch of young Mexicans, and it was a beautiful performance. It cinched the deal for my mom and dad. They said, oh yeah, this is an exciting, fun place. Oh, the house we bought is 3 blocks from the Lake Chapala Society. My dad knew he wanted to go over there and get involved with the different activities and clubs and groups during the day because my dad is very social. It turned out to be a great decision. And not only were we able to get that help for my mom, for a while it was 24 hours a day. Now we have it from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. One nurse that comes during the weekdays and another comes on the weekends, but you can get night nurses also. Now that we have them, we were so lucky to get a nurse that will also do cooking and cleaning. So my mom and dad have a wonderful breakfast made by her and a wonderful American lunch. She makes anything that has a recipe in English. Today she made chicken fried steak for them for lunch. And she cleans their casita every day. So I just feel so pampered. We have a gardener also who's $4 an hour who comes to take care of the yard every day. And because it's a big yard, so most people have a gardener once or twice a week. But I just feel like I'm living like a queen, yet it's costing so little compared to life in the United States.
Well, we're going to talk more about this gorgeous house and also how much they paid for it and things like that, what their property taxes are. Before we do that, I want to talk about the dogs, because that is a big thing here in Annette's life and really in a lot of people's lives who are down here. A lot of people end up volunteering with dogs. Also, Lake Chapala Society that she mentioned, where her dad volunteers, there's a video that I'm working on about that too. So you might find one of those in the corner too. Watch for that video. But let's talk about the dogs and how she's gotten involved with dogs here.
Each time that I came down to Mexico, which was 4 times before we moved here, I volunteered with a different organization to see what it was like and so where I might be able to fit in. And I discovered that I really wanted to help dogs down here. I did not do dog rescue in the United States. I had adopted rescued dogs, but never done day-to-day rescue work with dogs. But when I came down to visit, I saw how many dogs were in need. And also on the Facebook groups, you always see people saying, I just found this precious dog on the side of the road. Please, won't someone take care of it? I already have 5 dogs. I can't take any more. I started volunteering with Carrie LeClaire, the director of Voyage Dog Rescue, when I first got here. She was just a dynamo and doing it all herself, but running herself ragged. So I said, oh, what can I do to help? And I gradually got more and more involved in doing a lot of the administrative work that she was overwhelmed with. Some fostering, but the administrative work, which is kind of harder to sometimes get people who want to do tedious paperwork. So I got into that. And then Carrie eventually got to the point where Bon Voyage was just bigger than she was comfortable with. She preferred having a smaller organization, and it had grown a lot. And so she decided to move to Bucerias about a year ago and asked me to take over Bon Voyage as the director, and I did. And just all consuming. I love doing volunteer work, but really the dog rescue work just ended up taking over my life. I didn't think that I was going to be really busy when I was down here. I thought, I'll maybe volunteer 2 hours a day, but it ended up being much more than that. And it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of people that know how to say no and have a nice balance of play and volunteer work. I love doing it. I did adoptions of children when I was in the United States. I had orphanages in Ethiopia and Haiti and Kenya. My husband and I have 6 adopted children. And so my husband would not let me do child adoption down here. I saw the need and I said, honey, let's do international adoptions or at least an orphanage. And he said, no way. We did that for way too long in the U.S. You need a break from that. I need a break from that. So I said, okay, I'm going to rescue dogs then. So I still sometimes miss working with orphanages, but that's okay. I can do that a little bit on the side. Mama Cleo's ran out of food last week, so I went shopping for a bunch of groceries and took it over to them.
Tigger is subscribed to this channel. So if you're not already subscribed, be sure to click the subscribe button, the bell icon, and all.
Dogs, I think, are kind of taking the place of children. Since I used to have 6 kids, my house was busy all the time, and now it's busy with dogs instead of children. And they give me an outlet for my love and nurturing. And I think that's true for a lot of the people down here after they've retired. They want someone to love on, and that ends up being a dog and cats also, but for me it was dogs.
Okay, so this video might be going a lot of different directions, and I just talked about her hobbies, and I was like, well, what about your husband's hobbies? And that got to be a bit of a story, and so I'm going to have her tell that story to you.
About a year and a half ago, I got a call from a local hospital to tell me that my husband was there in the hospital, and I rushed over there to find out that he had been in an accident on his e-bike, his electric bike. He and a friend were coming back from lunch in Chapala, both on their e-bikes on the ciclopista, the bike lane between the 2 villages. And Mike, my husband, hadn't been hit by anything, but I don't know, for some reason he fell off his bike and he was probably going too fast. He wasn't wearing a helmet. He had a helmet. He usually wore his helmet. He didn't wear it that time. He had no abrasions on his hand, so he did not break his fall at all. And all of the force went right here, and it broke his skull in several places, his nose, his cheek. He had a brain bleed on his left frontal lobe. And the hospital here, which was San Antonio Hospital, is where the ambulance took him. And they had done a CT scan by the time I got there and said, he's going to need surgery. The shards of bone from his skull have gone into his brain. His brain is swelling. We've got to do something. And they said, we'll get the brain surgeon to come from Guadalajara. And this was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there was still no progress on getting the surgeon here. So I got on the phone with the surgeon, and the surgeon said, oh no, I have no plans to go there. They didn't tell me I have to go there. They said, you really should come to Guadalajara for brain surgery. They don't have the microscope that I need in their surgery room. Come to Guadalajara. Oh, the San Antonio Hospital people were not happy with that, because I think they were hoping to get the money from the surgery and the hospital stay there here in San Antonio. But I said, no, I'm taking him to Guadalajara then. And they wouldn't even give me a number of the ambulance service. I had to call a friend and say, please help me find an ambulance that can take my husband to Guadalajara. So I did. I found one. They came. I had to pay like $1,500 for the CT scan before they would let my husband leave the hospital to go to Guadalajara. So I put that on my credit card, drove with the ambulance driver to the hospital in Guadalajara, where the surgeon had told me that she practices. When I got there, they said, okay, we're going to need a $4,000 deposit on your credit card in order to start his treatment here and do the brain surgery. And I had just put $1,500 on my card, and I have a $5,000 daily limit on my credit card. I didn't know that, but my $4,000 wouldn't go through. So I said, please, I have a house in Ajijic. I promise I can pay this money. Just do the brain surgery. And fortunately, the surgeon went to bat for me and said, okay, we'll do it, but you have to pay tomorrow. So they did the surgery. It's a teaching hospital. Guadalajara has wonderful medical facilities. I felt very confident in the surgeon's ability. In fact, after the surgery, she came out and she showed me her cell phone, and it was my husband's brain with his skull folded back and all of these pins to hold things together. And she was so proud to show me the picture of his brain, which is okay with me because I have a medical background and it didn't make me upset or throw up. But it was just a very different experience from being in the U.S. because you have to stay there in the hospital with your family member or friend when you go to a hospital in Mexico. The nurses don't provide all of the little care things that they do in the United States. So I slept there in the hospital room. The nurses did not speak English. The doctor spoke English. I tried to use Google Translate, but we had some really difficult times in the middle of the night with nurses trying to do stuff that he didn't want them to do. He was so out of it after the surgery anyways. So I started also during the surgery texting my family and saying, please, can you send me some money because I have to pay tomorrow morning $4,000 for the surgery, and my credit card for some reason is not working because I didn't realize I had maxed out my daily limit. And so my brother sent like $5,000 by PayPal, which I then transferred into my it was such a problem. Oh, and then one of my friends that I had met down here, she had visited here. She and her husband were in Houston, and I texted her what had happened. I said, oh, please pray for my husband. He's in surgery. And she said, what can I do? And I said, well, I need $4,000 by tomorrow morning. And she sent me money too. And so it was, normally I didn't think there would be any problem paying for this, but I now know I must always have a buffer in my Mexican bank account or a credit card with plenty of space on it that will let me pay for medical emergencies, because you must pay before you get service. Fortunately, he was just there for 3 days. The total bill was $15,000 for brain surgery and 3 CT scans. And ambulance service, and he's fine now. It took him about a year to get over the traumatic brain injury, but he's fine now. And I feel it was so stupid for not having insurance lined up in advance. He had been rejected for insurance when we first came here because we just looked at Mexican insurance, but Mike has high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and that was a no-go. I mean, I thought that was a tiny issue. I thought most people had those issues, but that eliminated his ability to get regular insurance. And 2 weeks before the accident, I had gone to another insurance place, which is known as a U.S. insurance company that will cover accidents in Mexico. And I had not yet turned in my paperwork and paid for that insurance. So I now have a buffer in my bank account. I haven't gotten the insurance yet, but I'm going to. But it's so cheap here. Some people just decide to self-insure because it's so inexpensive compared to U.S. medical costs.
These guys are younger than 65, so Medicare is not an option, and I'm going to have some videos about that coming up. Also, tomorrow I'm going to be going to a place called Lakeside Medical Group. It seems like what their deal is they will take your U.S. insurance, including Medicare Advantage, and sort of translate it into the way that Mexican insurance works. This is kind of a new idea. Lakeside might be the only people doing this, and it's not available all the way across Mexico, but I'll know a lot more tomorrow about that. But it's very common for foreigners to self-insure because, I mean, brain surgery for $15,000 US, that's kind of amazing. The problem is when you have something even more serious. Someone in my town of El Centenario had a bicycling accident. He got hit by a car, and I'm not sure if he ever woke up, but it was 6 or 8 months of surgeries and in-home care and lots and lots. I think his widow said that the cost came up around $130,000 for 6 months worth of all that intensive care. So in the US, that would have probably been in the millions, but they didn't have insurance. Most people who are able to move to Mexico, $15,000 for brain surgery it's not chump change, but it's something most people could afford. But $130,000 is big. I want to do more videos about insurance, so there'll be more coming. Medicare Advantage plans, if you're retired at a kind of a more normal age, I guess, they can cover emergency surgery in Mexico. So there's ways to cover it. It can be a little bit complicated. Okay, so it is time to transition to that tour of this beautiful house.
This is Tigger. He is one of our fosters right now. The shelter is full. We have 111 dogs at our 2 shelters right now for Bon Voyage. So Tigger is here at my house, and he is a super energetic young poodle, adolescent poodle. So he may be jumping up during our tour.
Walk us through the front door and walk us around the house.
Okay. First, we have the living room, which is very bare because we're getting 2 of our sofas reupholstered. We just got this one chair reupholstered, a big overstuffed chair. It was only $200 US for both the fabric and the reupholstery work. And he did it in 24 hours for us. So I was really amazed. And we said, okay, go ahead and do the sofas then. We have my husband's and his father's Texas Aggie boots over here by the fireplace. They were in the Corps of Cadets and they were bronzed after they finished the Corps. So we had to bring those down here. Beyond the living room, we have the dining room, the formal dining room, but we really don't eat in there very much except for Christmas and Thanksgiving and parties. We have a guest bedroom over here, which is kind of small, so we don't use it very often, and the guest bathroom. And the office is over on the opposite side of the living room. And we have so many fireplaces. I think we have 5 fireplaces in the house, but we never use them. No, we maybe use one of them. Most of them are non-functioning anyways. And there's a safe in the fireplace over here that no one, including the previous owner, knows the combination to. So it just sits in the fireplace, and someday it'll probably end up having some sort of interesting thing inside. If we go through the kitchen over here, when we moved in, there were the shelves and the cabinets on the left, but there was no island, and there were no cabinets here on the right where there are now. But my husband likes to build furniture. That's his hobby. So he built these kitchen cabinets to add on. And then this island is just an old piece of furniture, which we repurposed. One thing that I really miss about cooking in the U.S. in my U.S. kitchen is the oven, because in Mexico, almost everyone uses gas instead of electricity. For some reason, this gas stoves down here do not have a heating element on the top. I had never had a gas stove in the States, so I didn't know if this was a normal problem. And so the stove will not brown things when I bake. So when I make a turkey or cookies or bread, there's no browning on the top. So I may give in and get a dual fuel oven so that I can have the heating element on the top, but still cook with gas, because gas is less expensive than electricity here. And we're one of my few friends that don't have solar panels yet. That was on our to-do list. We'll get solar panels eventually, but right now we pay like $150 US a month for electricity in the summertime, which is when it's the highest, because we have 2 air conditioners, one in my parents' casita and one in my casita.
And that's every month or every 2 months?
We get it every 2 months, but it breaks down to $150 a month. So it's a $300 bill every 2 months.
Electricity pricing in Mexico is really very interesting because it's all through CFE, through its government-run electricity, but the rates are different by what month you're in and also where you live. So electricity in La Paz, especially in the summer, is much cheaper than electricity here in Ajijic at the same time of the year. So it really has to do with how much you need electricity. They'll lower the cost of it. People who do have newer homes, who have a lot of air conditioners and things like that, it starts to make sense, especially in these higher tariff zones, to install solar. Let's continue moving from the kitchen into whatever's next.
Next is our outdoor living room, and it has another mural by the same muralist that did our others. And we use this for watching television. Last year, I had Zumba classes for me and my friends where we watched YouTube. It was during COVID. We watched it during COVID and exercised outside and watched the YouTube videos. And then, of course, over here to the left is our pool. We have a pool room, a bathroom, an outdoor kitchen. We actually leave the doors open all the time. Year round, the doors are open. I really only use air conditioning usually in May and June, because that's when it's hottest. And then the rest of the year, I just use fans. And it does get cool in the wintertime, so that I put on flannel sheets and flannel pajamas, and it's a nice change. My parents' casita is up here at the very back of the yard. There's actually 2 casitas. My parents mainly live in the left one. The right one has Dad's exercise equipment and a Murphy bed that my husband made in there for when guests come. When my mom had a night nurse, she slept in that room also. Above us, up here on the second floor, is the guest suite. We have a big bedroom with a high ceiling and a canopy bed and a guest bath. And then above that is a mirador, which is like top floor balcony. And the mirador has really nice views of the mountains, and we have electricity up there. We installed that after we moved here. My husband, he had to bring his tools. So the first thing we built was we made the garage area into his workshop. So it's like a 3-car garage space that is now for all of his woodworking tools. We also built a roof on the top of the mirador because it was really hot without the roof. There's a bar, refrigerator, and drinks up there. When we have volunteers come down to help Voyage, such as to be flight escorts to take dogs up to Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, we have them stay for free in our guest suite and the mirador, and they can just relax for up to a week and enjoy their time here before they take dogs back.
This one needs a flight. You need a flight, don't you?
Please, I want to adopt this one.
Okay.
Over there is the master bedroom where you see all those dogs up against the window wanting to get out. So we're not going to go in the master bedroom, but it's pretty spacious. It has a big master bath. We just took out the old tub and put in a new tub. I'm so happy to have a tub. A lot of houses down here don't have tubs. You only have showers. So it's a luxury now for me to have a tub.
So Annette did promise that she's going to share the price that they paid 5 years ago for this, and that's going to be a pre-COVID price, and that means it's going to be much less than it is now. Prices in Mexico really went up during COVID because everyone in the States and Canada realized that they could either retire or work remotely, and so there's a lot more demand down here now. But We're not going to do that until Annette tells us how you can get involved with her dog rescue nonprofit, because that is important.
Before we talk about the dogs, I have to tell you about the mosquitoes. During the rainy season, the mosquitoes can be pretty bad down here, and I have not had my yard fumigated for mosquitoes yet this rainy season. So they're all around us right now. And the first year that I was here during the rainy season, I got dengue fever, as did my dad and our gardener. They come from standing water. Not all of the mosquitoes carry dengue, but it is endemic here. The government sprays for it, but still, all it takes is one mosquito to bite you. The bad thing about dengue is that it lowers your platelets, which causes your blood to clot. So you can actually die from dengue, and it's not normally the first time you get dengue, but it's on a subsequent case of dengue, because you can get it multiple times. There are, I think, 3 variants of it. It just made me feel like my bones and joints were, it's very, very painful. And there's nothing to do. The doctor said, okay, well, you need to take paracetamol, which is sort of like Tylenol, and mango leaves or something, some traditional remedy. You need to have your blood tested every few days to see if your platelets are staying high enough. But it took 3 weeks of being flat on my back in bed to recover from that. And in the meantime, my appetite was nothing, which was the only plus, because I lost a lot of weight during it. But my dad, who's already super skinny, he lost a lot of weight when he had dengue, and he couldn't afford to lose weight. So he actually afterwards started a contest with his nurse, with mom's nurse, so that she would get paid extra money for every pound he gained each week. So she would make all sorts of sweets and fattening things to get him back in shape. Okay, that's for the mosquitoes. You have to wear bug spray. As for the dogs, we always need more volunteers with Voyage Dog Rescue. We have 2 rescues out past Chapala, east of Chapala, where we need people to help walk dogs and play with the puppies and socialize them. We really, really need foster parents who can keep a dog at their home, usually only for 4 weeks until the dog flies to an adoptive family up north, and also people who want to do administrative work or social media, publicity, marketing to help get the word out in cities where there's shortages of dogs. From Texas, I never knew there were shortages of dogs, but we actually have a pretty great demand for dogs in the Canadian cities that we fly to, which is mainly Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. And in the Northeast and the Northwest United States, there's sometimes a shortage of dogs, and so we fly them up there also. We also need people who will fly the dogs. You fly 5 dogs if you're going on Volaris, or 11 dogs if you're going on Aeromexico, and we take you to the airport and check you in and check the dogs in, and you're met at the other end up north where people take the dogs from you. It's really wonderful to see the dogs meet their adoptive families, and that all the happy tears at the airport up north. But we love having volunteers, and it's a great way to meet other people with similar interests.
So I love that idea. If you're thinking about moving to Ajijic, this might be a good introduction, is just to do a visit to take some dogs north. So do something good with your trip, along with learning about Ajijic and maybe staying in the extra room here. That's a great way to try out Ajijic just a little bit, or do one of those exploratory trips. If you followed my channel, you know that Kat and I kind of made a spur-of-the-moment decision to buy a house in Mexico. A lot of people do suggest that you rent somewhere and really get some exposure to it, but so many people have been really happy, including us, all of us, to just jump right in. So don't worry. You can always back out in the future. You can say, you know what, this Mexico thing's not for me. Sell your house down here, especially in the market now. You can definitely sell a house down here, no problem, and move back to the United States, move back to Canada, move back to Europe. I would say, though, do it now. Make it happen. Make it happen when you're younger, because you can live down here so much less expensively than you can in the States, so you can retire early. And that's what this channel is all about, is getting to Mexico before that typical retirement age. So hopefully that will be in your near future. Speaking of buying houses, I know you guys want to know how much this house cost, so let's get the big reveal before we wrap up the video.
We bought this house in 2019, moved in 2020 for $850,000 plus a $50,000 furniture package. We could have just said, take all the furniture with you, but there were some really big pieces that we wanted. And so we went ahead and said, we want this particular group of furniture for $50,000. Because we shared the cost with my parents, it ended up being a really good buy.
And that is a great idea, the idea of sharing with your parents, because the cost down here for their care is less. So everyone, it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win. And it's nice because it made this property a possibility to have two families living on it. It might sound like a big number for Mexico, but I think it is also, we're right here on Lake Chapala in a place with some of the best weather in the world. Everything else, healthcare is inexpensive. We've already covered that. Also, just going out to eat is inexpensive. So once you get here, your costs are low, your taxes are low, all that is great. And a house like this in somewhere that would be similar would probably be somewhere in California. Really, that's kind of the closest thing I would say. And it would be a heck of a lot more expensive.
One of the ways that we were able to retire at 51 and 54 was because we had saved a lot in our 401k. My husband had worked as an electrical or mechanical engineer for 30 years for the same company. And there are some loopholes of how to get money out of your 401k without that 10% penalty. I do not know all the details. Our financial advisor was the one who told us about it, but it really did work. When we're able to get monthly payments, sort of like we're still drawing a salary, but it's coming out of our 401k and there's no penalty to do that.
So I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I enjoyed doing it and seeing this home and learning about all the different things. There's so much more showed up in this interview than I expected. And I've got other videos from the Lake Chapala area, like the Lake Chapala Society, if that one's ready, is going to be up here. And also about medical care or elder care in Mexico, and particularly in Ajijic. So I'll see you in those videos. Hasta luego.